because I believe that we all have hardships that we have to overcome. And being a preemie has just made me feel like no hardship is too big because I was able to survive my birth in the first place. I feel like a rejection letter doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. And also I think because I was a preemie, it really inspired me to not take a single day for granted. And I really love the quote that I included in the bio for this newsletter that John Wooden said, to make each day a masterpiece. And I think it's a great quote to live by and also to write by, to make each writing day a masterpiece, even if you're facing writer's block or just the story isn't going the direction you want, or you just can't really get into the mood, just to think about making it a masterpiece. And if it was one of the last days you had left to write, what would you really want to say? So with that introduction, I wanted to start talking a little bit about my writing career and how I've gotten started. I was born a preemie. It's also inspired me not to wait to do anything. If I want to do something, I want to do it now. And I've always loved to write. My dad, Woody, is a sports writer, and so I grew up with writing as just a part of my life. Like many children, my parents would read me bedtime stories before I went to sleep. And then I would wake up in the morning and see my dad writing. And so the connection between reading and writing was always made very strongly in my life. And I think a lot of kids will start making up their own stories in their heads. Maybe they'll make up stories between little action figures, or they'll start telling stories to their parents. But I was always inspired from an early age to want to write those stories down, to be just like my dad. And so I started writing in elementary school. I was really lucky to have some encouraging teachers. I went to Poinsettia Elementary School in Ventura, and I remember some of my first teachers in kindergarten and first grade were wonderful, and they invited me to read my short stories to my classmates, and I was really lucky that I just got wonderful feedback. And I think that's really important. If there are any teachers out there, you can make such a difference in a child's life. I'm still so grateful to the amazing teachers that I had when I was in elementary school. And so in fifth grade, I heard about a grant that my school was offering to do some sort of artistic endeavor. Maybe you would do some sort of creative artwork or drama, or in my case it was writing. So I put together some of the short stories I'd written and the poetry that I'd written, and I drew some illustrations, and I applied for a grant to put it together into a book. And my idea was to sell copies of the book to raise money to repay the grant so they could offer an extra one the following year. I've also been inspired with my birth as a preemie to want to pay forward to those that have helped me in my life. And I know that I can never pay back the nurses that cared for me and the doctors that cared for me, but I try to pay forward in their honor by doing things to help others. So I was lucky that I received the grant, and I went to Kinko's copy shop and printed up some first copies of There's a Huge Pimple on My Nose. And I wish I had brought the first edition. You should have seen this. It was more like a pamphlet than an actual book. It had staple binding. It was just done at Kinko's. And I took them to school and I sold them for $2. And I was overjoyed that my first printing sold out within the first day at school. I sold all 40 copies. And I mean, can you imagine what that would do to a fifth grader's self-esteem? I was just, I was hooked. And so I went back to Kinko's and got my second printing printed up. And before long, that sold out as well. And they wrote an article about me in the Ventura County Star. And I thought, okay, this is great. I'm on my way. I'm on my way to being a writer. And I also try to keep some of that innocence with me now. I remember I was so just so excited that the sky wasn't the limit for me. I could do anything. I sent off copies of my book to a bunch of newspapers and magazines around the area. And I think because I was so naive and I wasn't afraid of rejection, I wasn't afraid to shoot big. Like I sent a copy to the Los Angeles Times. I mean, if I maybe published my first book today, I would maybe be scared to send it to the Los Angeles Times because it's the Los Angeles Times. I mean, seriously, how many fifth grader books are ever reviewed in the Los Angeles Times. But they reviewed it. They did a little short blurb in their book review section, and orders started pouring in. So I went to a professional print shop, and I got this book, glossy binding, glossy cover. I was very excited, and it's now sold over 900 copies. It's been reviewed in the Los Angeles Times and Girls Life magazine and Cosmo Girl magazine, and it's just real proof that if you have a dream and you go for it with little baby steps, it can just snowball into something that you never would have imagined. And I think it's just a great lesson that no matter what stage of your writing you're at, it's always great to have big dreams, because, I mean, if you don't dream big, then you never know what big things are going to come for you. So Pimple, to me, I always will treasure this, not only because it's my first book, but also just because I think it's a great reminder to me never to let the writing business get you too worried about rejection or too jaded about just how hard it can be. It can also be so exciting.